You spent 6 hours on biology today, but can you actually solve a PYQ in 30 seconds?
Probably not, if you're still using textbook-only methods.
Welcome to Neet Coded Podcast, where we decode the medical entrance grind using high-yield strategies. Hello, guys. I'm your host of the show, and today we have a special guest with us, Dr. Sirius.
Hello, students. I'm Dr. Sirius, and today we're cutting through the chaos to get you that white coat.
So, in today's episode, we're unraveling, decoding, the first hook of a chain, the living world, so that by the end of this podcast, you and I walk away with a guaranteed score boost.
Okay, so when you think about life on Earth, the sheer scale is just mind-boggling. We're talking an estimated 1.7, maybe 1.8 million known species. That number is almost impossible to really picture.
It really is. I mean, absolute spectacular chaos in a way. And it's why that feeling of all we get, watching birds migrate or seeing life just thriving in some volcanic hot spring, it's amazing, but it has to be underpinned by some solid
Science. Exactly. Cold, hard science. So that's our mission for this deep dive. It's kind of twofold, really. First, we need to tackle that fundamental question. What technically makes something living versus, say, a rock? Non-living.
The big definition question.
Yeah. And second, how on earth did biologists manage to bring any kind of order, any system, to this staggering amount of biodiversity? We're diving into the science of organizing life. And before we even get to classifying the tiniest microbe, we absolutely have to acknowledge the person who really defined the basic unit we use for all this.
You're talking about Ernst Mayr. Lived from 1904 to 2004, a full century. Often called the Darwin of the 20th century, and for good reason.
It's fascinating because his whole career pretty much was focused on how species actually come about, the origin of species diversity. He basically took the question, how do new species arise, and made it central to modern biology. And in doing that, he really pioneered the biological species concept that we still largely use today. He sort of set the stage, defined the playing field.
He really did, built the foundation for modern systematics, and forced us all to be really precise. And precision is exactly what you need when you start to try to list the traits that separate living things from non-living.
Okay, so let's start there. If I just ask someone off the street what makes something alive, they'd probably say something simple like, well, it moves or it grows. But in biology, those two, growth and reproduction, they're the first ones you have to add caveats to, right? Why is that? It's because biology demands that precision we talked about. Take growth. Technically, we define it as an irreversible increase in size and mass of an organism.
Irreversible. Okay.
That technical bit is crucial, because if you look at something non-living, like say a crystal, while a crystal grows, it adds material to its surface, a process called accretion.
Right. So a crystal gets bigger, it grows, but it's definitely not alive. So growth alone can't be the defining feature.
Precisely. And you run into a similar issue with reproduction. The definition seems solid. The biological process by which an organism gives rise to young ones similar to itself.
Sounds defining, right?
Seems like it should be, but then you hit the classic exception, the textbook example, the mule, the sterile hybrid.
Exactly. A mule is absolutely alive. It grows. It metabolizes, it responds to things, but it can't reproduce. It can't produce fertile offspring.
So reproduction is obviously essential for a species to continue over time, but it's not a universal characteristic you find in every single living individual.
Okay, so if growth and reproduction aren't the absolute defining traits for an individual organism, what's left? What truly is universal to all life?
Well, it really boils down to two fundamental things: internal chemistry and, let's call it, external awareness or responsiveness.
Okay, internal chemistry. That's metabolism.
Yes, metabolism, defined as the sum total of all chemical reactions that take place in an organism. All the breaking down of molecules for energy, all the building up of new molecules for structure. That constant chemical activity.
It's like this incredibly complex internal traffic system running constantly. If you're doing metabolism, you are alive. Full stop.
Exactly. And because this constant molecular churn is universal, we find it in every single life form ever discovered. It really is a key defining characteristic. If an organism stops metabolizing, well, it's no longer alive.
Simple as that. Okay, so that's the internal part. What about the second one, the external awareness, response to stimuli?
Right? The ability to sense changes in the environment and react to them. Biologists often call this responsiveness, or sometimes irritability.
Irritability, like being easily annoyed?
Haha, well, not quite like us. It means the capacity to react. Think of a plant bending towards sunlight, or a single-celled amoeba moving towards a food source, or, you pulling your hand away from a hot stove. That's all response to stim.
Every living thing does this in some way.
Every single one. It's fundamental.
I just want to pause on the language for a second. Because when people hear response to stimuli, sometimes they might immediately think of consciousness with a capital C. Self-awareness, thinking.
That's a really important distinction to make. Biologically, when we talk about response to stimuli as a defining feature, we're usually talking at a more fundamental level. It's about the organism's ability, even at a cellular level, to perceive changes outside itself and adjust its internal state or behavior accordingly. It's that basic capacity to interact with the world.
Which a rock or a crystal or a dead organism simply doesn't have.
Exactly. No interaction, no response.
Okay, so we have our two core defining features, metabolism and response to stimuli. But, biology being biology, the living world seems to love throwing curveballs, right? Exceptions that test the boundaries.
Oh, absolutely. Life loves the gray area.
So let's talk about those, the things that blur the line between living and non-living. What are the main culprits?
Well, the most famous ones are probably viruses. Things like tobacco mosaic virus or HIV. They're fascinating because they completely lack their own metabolism. They can't do any of those chemical reactions themselves.
And they can only reproduce inside a host cell, right? They hijack the host's machinery.
Precisely. Outside of a living host cell, a virus is basically just an inert package of chemicals, mostly genetic material and protein. It can't do anything.
So it has genetic material like life, but it doesn't meet our core definitions on its own. It's like biologically relevant, but not independently alive.
That's a good way to put it. They're these ultimate biological parasites, forcing us to constantly refine that line between alive and not alive.
And it gets even weirder, doesn't it?
It does. You go simpler still, you find viroids, these tiny, circular RNA molecules. Just RNA, no protein coat like a virus that infect plants. Totally dependent on the host cell for everything.
Just infectious RNA. Wow. And then prion.
Prion. Yeah, they're truly spooky, as you said earlier. These aren't even nucleic acids. They're infectious proteins.
Proteins? How does a protein reproduce?
That's the bizarre part. They don't reproduce in the traditional sense. They work by causing normally folded proteins already present in the host, usually in the brain, to misfold into the prion form. It's like a chain reaction of misfolding. They lack DNA or RNA entirely. They really defy almost every classic definition.
Incredible. Okay, one more complex example often mentioned here. Lichens.
Right? Lichens aren't actually a single organism. They're a classic example of symbiosis, a partnership, usually between a fungus and an alga, or sometimes a cyanobacterium.
So the fungus provides the structure, maybe water retention, and the alga or cyanobacterium does the photosynthesis, providing food.
Exactly. It's this composite organism that functions as a single unit, showing both characteristics you'd normally associate with fungi, heterotrophic absorbing nutrients, and plant-like autotrophic making their own food. A self-sustaining partnership.
So all these examples, viruses, viroids, prion, lichens, they really highlight why having those precise definitions of life, metabolism, and response is so important. Because if you can't even agree on what you're looking at, how can you possibly start? How can you possibly start organizing it?
Couldn't have said it better myself. Definition is the first step to organization.
It absolutely is. And it's incredible to think that something as simple as a protein or a strand of RNA can completely blur the lines of what we call life. But as we've seen today, biology is rarely about simple lines, it's about the systems that connect them. Dr. Sirius, thank you so much for joining us today and helping us cut through the chaos of the living world. You've definitely given us that guaranteed score boost we promised at the start.
My pleasure. Remember, students, don't just memorize the facts. Understand the logic. That's how you earn the white coat, fellas.
Exactly. And for those of you listening, if you're still using those textbook-only methods, remember, science shows there's a better way. We've decoded the first hook of the chain today, but we're just getting started. In part 2, we're moving from defining life to organizing it. We'll be breaking down binomial nomenclature and the taxonomic hierarchy, basically, how to name and rank millions of species without losing your mind. Oh, and let's test if you can actually solve a living world PYQ in under 30 seconds using the logic we discussed today. Which of the following is considered a defining property of living organisms rather than just a characteristic? A. Growth. B. Reproduction. C. Metabolism. D. Ability to move. Comment your answer under 30 seconds, and if your answer is correct, you get a red heart emoji. Thank you for listening to our podcast. This has been at Neet Coded. Keep decoding, keep grinding, and we'll catch you in the next one.